Am I live? Hello? Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate. Welcome to our Deep Dive Wednesday class with Guy Finley. Hello to our in-person audience. Hello to our online audience. Glad you could join us. If you're new today, the format for our Deep Dive Wednesdays is that we take this time to explore material that you, our audience, have submitted for Guy to explain more deeply. So this includes any idea or insights or specific readings from one of his books, audio albums, any of his programs. And it also includes material from a favorite master you might have, anything that you want greater insight into. So first, a thank you to those who have submitted material that we're going to be covering today. And we invite everyone here online to go ahead and continue submitting writings for us to look at during these discussions. And you can do that through our contact form on our website, which is at guyfinley.org/contact. So send those in. Your request will be added to our list. We actually have quite a list, but keep coming, sending those in, and we will hold on to them, and they'll be addressed when we can. So we're now holding, just so you know, we hold these Deep Dive Wednesday classes twice a month, and our next one will be in 2 weeks on June 12th. All right, let's go ahead and get started. But just wanted to make a quick note for those who have sent us questions. They have been lightly edited to make it easier to read and understand and put on our screen, but Guy will be addressing the questions as they were submitted. He read the original questions, so just wanted you to know that. All right, for our in-person audience, if you could check your cell phones and make sure that they are off, appreciate that, just so it's not disruptive to our class. For our online audience, if you have any tech issues during the broadcast, just send a note in the question area or the chat area, wherever you're watching, and I'll try to help you as best I can. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I need to do something. I have a couple hats, so hang on one second. All right, there we go. I just wanted to make sure that you could see the title and key lesson, those of you who are on GoToWebinar. So I'm going to go ahead and read the topic for tonight and the key lesson, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. The title is, Welcome the Light of Life and Say Hello to a Life Free of Fear. Here's the key lesson. Here's why no negative reaction, no matter how valid or inescapable it may seem, can liberate us from any unwanted moment it blames for its pain. All lingering, painful reactions are the reincarnation of a dark nature whose life depends on their reoccurrence.
Good evening, everyone, and of course, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is that you are joining us for this discussion. Twice a month we do something that we call Deep Dive Wednesday. And as Kate briefly explained, the purpose of it is so that you might, as you wish, submit something that you are interested in, that you heard, read, perhaps from some of my work or some old master that caught your attention, something from any scripture, so that in posing the question, you can hear not just a multiple of different angles in terms of you grasping the more full significance of it, but that you can see that it already has so much more significance than you ever could have applied to it by yourself. The remarkable thing is that we all, to whatever extent it's true, believe that our present view, whatever it is the entirety of possibilities. And we never suspect that we arrive at this conclusion that my particular view in that moment, which almost always follows some reaction, that my view has been painted by my nature responding in that moment to what has set it off so that my view is always a certain kind of comfort to me, because it makes me feel as if I actually know the content of the moment, why it's happened, and what I need to do in order to get past the conflict I have with that moment. So what we're going to do this evening is I've selected the next 5 questions or comments that came in. And I hope to get through all 5. I don't know that I will. But the questions came in such a way, call it synchronicity, that they are very much aligned with each other, so that I can answer really all 4 with one set of comments, which I won't do, but I've decided that instead I will take the first 2 questions that are related. I will then discuss those in a broad sense. Then we'll go back and look at each question by itself, so that you and I can examine what we understand about the nature of the question, what the person is hoping to find out through the question. And then we'll go on to the next 2 in the same fashion. Everybody understand what we're going to do? So you joining us from wherever you are in the world, of course, assuming that you're joining us live, this won't work if you're listening to the recorded or the archive version. You're welcome, in fact, invited to share with us your comments. We're going to go deeply into one of these set of comments as soon as I finish reading a special writing that I've prepared for tonight, which will appear on your screen and that you can download for free. So with those comments in place, before I have Kate read the first 2 questions, I want to say something to you. What if you didn't know anything at all about what you're sure you know about? Tell me where your pain comes from, where these negative reactions come from, and how they linger and on and on. Where do they come from, other than a moment in which something challenges or interferes with a certainty I have about that moment or that person or that life? So that I see the intersection of that event as something that is a challenge to who and what I think I am. And you and I all know what happens when something that we think we are, that we own, that we know, when it's challenged, what happens to us? Do we become nice people or unnice people? I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through the material we're going to go through tonight. I know this is hard for you to believe, but I tell you, it is absolutely true. My interest is not in trying to convince you of anything. You'll have enough time, God willing, in your life to realize that your convictions and whatever you think they are, how right you are, spiritual, deep, strong, you'll come to the final, by the grace of God, the understanding that the conviction that you live from about these things is your captivity. And there's an entirely different life possible. You're just beginning to scratch it intellectually with the knowledge that you're gaining from these talks. But to scratch the surface intellectually is nothing compared to what happens when your heart and your mind and your body begin to have the simultaneous revelation of how it is that you, without knowing it, have been a complete captive of a level of consciousness you didn't even suspect existed, until at last it becomes suspect to you because of the pain that never goes away in spite of telling you everything that you know about why it should. So that's good enough for setting the stage. Let's have the first 2 questions and then we'll get into this together.
Okay. Here we go. There we go. Okay. First 2 questions. The first one is from Kevin. Excuse me. In my studies over the years, I keep learning about the ego. What is it? Why is it there? Why do we have it? I don't have answers to these questions. I keep hearing how ego is something destructive, that we should observe to understand it, so we are not under its influence. Why did the Creator create it for us? Why don't animals have it? What is the nature of it? Is it an energy? Is it our brain? There's a lot of questions in one. And here's the second question from Leah. I would like to understand and learn more about chief feature. What role does it play in our life? How do we see what our chief feature is?
When I get to the second question, it'll help you understand the terminology. But for now, the first question was, I keep learning about the ego. What is it? Why is it there? Why do we have it? I don't have answers to these questions. I keep hearing how the ego is something destructive, that we should learn to observe it so we're not under its influence. Why did the Creator create it for us? And you can see, if you can. In fact, let's do this. What do you think the person who sent this question in, Kevin, what do you think Kevin's really asking here? What do you think Kevin is asking? John.
Why am I so conflicted?
John said, the person's really asking, why am I so conflicted? Barbara.
Why am I in so much pain?
Similar to what John said. Barbara said, why am I in so much pain? Anybody else? What's this person asking? What is this ego thing? I've heard it's destructive. Wayne.
Who am I?
Who am I? Wayne says. Anybody else? Patricia.
How can I do what's right?
I can see often that I don't do the good I would, but I do the evil I would not. How do I stop doing the thing I know I shouldn't and do the thing that I would like to do? That's buried in the question too, isn't it? What else, please? Anybody? Leah.
How does the ego play a role in my life? Why is it important to me?
What is this thing called ego that I have assumed I know something about? And why is it doing and going about the things it's going about if in fact the outcome of everything that it is active doing produces this conflict and this suffering and this pain? Anybody else want to pick up? Doug, please.
Why is there this thing called ego seem to be against me, against my better wishes? Why is it, how did it get implanted there?
So what is this ego? How did it get implanted? And why, in quotes, does it seem to go against my own best interests? Eric.
Why isn't the work easy?
Eric said, why isn't this spiritual work easy? Why must I see the things that I see? And why do I have to bear these things when no one else is interested in bearing them that I know? What is it in me that endlessly explains everything to me so that it seems endlessly I know what has happened and why it has happened? All of that is in the question, isn't it? To use the word I for a moment, I increasingly renounce the position of being someone who knows something that you need to know. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. And I say that to you because the inevitability, God willing, the inevitability of your spiritual work is to finally bring you into a place where a certain number of shocks are inescapable for you, and they formulate at once an awareness, an understanding that your whole life has been based on an understanding that you were given as you were born and brought into your so-called maturity, and that understanding, the essence of it, is what you might call the manifestation of ego, and that it has always deceived you, never not deceived you. And the deception isn't necessarily in the things that one experiences as a result of this interplay between what we can call false self, personality. That's what ego is. This germ of image of an idea that over time is strengthened like one of those stalactites from the ceiling that's drip, 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 crystallization, crystallization, until all that's left is this hardened form that is hardened by not the world that it came into, but by its response to a world that it says challenges that which formulated it through time. And I make these comments to you because God willing, one day you'll understand that one of the things that this ego does, that this personality does, that this false self does, is it's endlessly framing everything that happens to you. No matter what it is, your own thoughts. This nature, this unconscious mind that sleeps until a specific condition triggers the content of it related to what has disturbed it. And in that moment of disturbance, it will take the disturbance and it will bring it into a framework that existed in that consciousness prior to the disturbance, that was actually disturbed by that moment, and then wants to find some way to be at peace with itself again when it tries to put piece and piece together so that it can understand what's happened. That's why I asked you in the beginning, what if I didn't know anything at all about what I assume I do? What would happen to me? How would I frame your disdain? Do you understand? Do you ever feel people disdain you? Just wait till you become more spiritual. You won't believe the disdain you'll get. What do I do with the fact that you've said this about me, or I heard you did this? What do I do with a world that I can see is coming apart at the seams? What do I do with all this pain? Pain that I don't even know is there until suddenly some condition produces a reaction I wasn't ready for, and the next thing I know I'm trying to deal with, frame that reaction so that I can at least feel like I'm in charge of it. And then you have to ask yourself, again, I can't do anything for you. I have to ask myself, sweet Jesus, how many times in my life have I had that exact reaction? And then again and again and again, relive it, relive it, relive it. And relive it not just in terms of the experience, but relive the framework that tells me why I'm going through that again and who's responsible for it. Even though everyone I know has died, someone else is responsible for it. I'll find something that will allow me to deal with this darkness that has come up inside of me that I didn't know was there. Everybody following? I'm answering the first question to some extent. I'll get to the next one. But I want to read to you an answer. And when I say read to you an answer, I don't mean read to you something that you are to find an answer in. I want to read to you something that if you have anything left in you that can understand, will recognize the truth of it. Not because I've said so, but because your experience confirms it yourself. You take anything I say without some kind of experiential relationship to it, so that you can begin to see some nuance in whatever it is that's being described about this negativity, then you're dead in the water. But if you can begin to see a little bit, I heard a long time ago an idea like that, and now I can begin to see it's connected, and my life is kind of like this. I don't know what's happening, and all of a sudden, up from within me rises something horrific. Anger, hatred, fear, regrets, resentments, jealousy, ambition just comes rising up inside of me, and I didn't even know it was there. Yes or no? Out loud. Yes. So I've written a piece called What Lurks Beneath. And this piece that I'm going to read to you, as best I can, I'll be as brief as I can if I'm going to explain it at all, so that you can begin to see that what I'm describing is not just this world, is not just our present civilization, in quotes, but I am describing to you the consciousness responsible for its appearance and everything that transpires in its consistent reincarnation of itself. Because whether you know it or not, somebody challenged yesterday or whatever, I don't know what today's, Sunday. Well, what about the Israelis and Hamas? You saying that there shouldn't be hatred or something like that? I didn't have time, and I'm not even that interested. But do you understand that long before there was Hamas, there was this group and that group, and then the Romans before that? And what did Christ do about all of that? Why did they crucify him? Why didn't his disciples stand up for him? Because they thought they would lead him into a war and liberate the Jews, liberate the repressed people, so that they could be released from all the hatred they have. Do you know that no one has been released from their hatred, no matter how many times so-called peace has been produced on this planet? And the way you can know the truth of that is that you still have hatred in you for anybody that challenges anything that you believe is true. And it doesn't matter whether you're left, right, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, it makes no difference whatsoever. It's the same consciousness in 8 billion human beings, same consciousness. And something lurks, doesn't it? I was thinking about I don't know about you, I wish that I hadn't been exposed, but there are parts of us that are drawn to horror, dark fantasy. We're just drawn to it. It's part of an unconscious nature, part of this personality, believe it or not, that has something in it that actually feeds on certain negative states, feeds on it, and so we're drawn to it. We can't help it. Like people drive by a car wreck. What am I interested in there? Why am I interested in that guy getting handcuffed over there? Because something in you is feeding, but you don't know it's feeding. You call it, I'm just interested. There's no you that's interested. There is a sense of self that appears when the problem or the horror show starts that's drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I'm never going to get through this talk. Extraordinary. Read along with me. Don't believe it. See if it's true or not, for your own sake. What lurks beneath? No revolution of the exterior kind, no movement dedicated to opposing the powers that be has ever changed the consciousness that creates and sustains the system of those powers against which it pushes back. No matter how well intended at its outset, all revolutions begin as an incomplete movement born of self-ignorance. As such, they cannot help but create confusion and chaos and ultimately increase the very conflict they set out to resolve. This is not just the body political, religious, philosophical. This is the whole of the world through time that is made in the image of this consciousness that formulates it. Next paragraph, please. So that as a result of this corruption, as history proves, all civilizations collapse under the weight of their own miscreations, where its so-called leaders struggle in vain, right up to their demise, to escape the conflict they create with each iteration of their self-righteous ideology they make into law. It's a form of poetic justice, really, played out over a span of time too great to see. All false prophets are destroyed by the gods they've made in their own image. Next paragraph, please. And so it goes. The only thing such revolutions produce is yet another system of sorrow, founded in yet another set of powers that will, in time, be found inadequate to serve the hunger of those who seek them. And then they will be overthrown by those who imagine themselves stronger and wiser, and therefore better suited to run the world. But let it be noted, hold on. Please, what did St. Paul say? Our struggle's not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities. Our struggle is with an unseen, invisible government that runs everything in an unseen way, so that I run at every call, every movement it takes in order to do what? To come up with another set of powers to overcome whatever has overpowered me. Isn't that what every new philosophy is? How many times men and women run from the one work, not mine, the one work that can produce in a human being this true revolution that isn't about overthrowing anything, but rather seeing that which has overthrown you in order to serve it without any awareness that that's happening to you. So that I come up with a new set of powers. My new set of powers are I'm going to be more demonstrative, I'm going to be more this, I'm going to be a little bit more of that, I'm going to get a little bit rid of this, and get a little more of that. A little pinch of this, and then get a little like that. That's what I'm going to do. And then, because I've identified with the powers that, by the way, why am I imagining them to begin with? Why? Because I'm under the power of something. So then I come up with a new set of powers, and by God, I have to believe in them, because my whole identity, the future of my immortal self, rests on everything remaining in place according to how I've imagined it. Yes or no? My finances, my health, the way you're supposed to be, how the world should turn, all of that's built into every new personality structure. And personality never stops restructuring itself because it's not aware of the fact that it doesn't matter how it restructures itself, it can't change the basis of its structure, which is a sleeping nature set against itself. Still with me? I don't want to go too fast. And then they're overthrown by those who imagine themselves stronger and wiser. Can you see this for a split second? You can see this in the world, right? But you can't see it in yourself. You are overthrown all the time by the next thing that you believe will empower you to get over what you were thrown over by the last time. Every new image overthrows the self that was identified with it before. Doesn't it take its place? You don't see the revolution, but there is something in you that's revolving around and around and around, looking for some way out of what? The last thing I imagined when I revolted against you, them, this or that, and what would save me. And sweet God, it didn't save me. I need another revolution. And then that revolution is always divided into parties, left, right, high, low, woke, not woke, all that. I almost said a bad word, I choked on it. And I just go for the next and the next and the next and the next and the next. And therefore, who better suited to run the world than the new me that just was born out of getting rid of the old me? Except there's one problem with that system, isn't there? The new me that replaced the old me is what? The old me. It's just dressed differently. I have new ideas. I'm not the same. You don't know what I've been through. I've been through so much. I'm a new man. No, you're not. You're a new man when you have seen to the death of the old man. And not until that happens are you a new human being. And you can't overthrow the old man. Anything in you that wants to throw the old life is the old life reinventing itself, which is why it keeps returning and returning and returning. I haven't even got to the second question yet. Take a deep breath. Every last thing I'm telling you is news from heaven. I have an idea for a new book I won't be able to write. I'm just running out of time. It's called Postcards from Heaven. Every epiphany is a postcard from heaven. But the problem with the real postcards from heaven is that in order to read and understand them, you have to recognize that what's being illuminated in that moment is the futility of everything that you have called yourself and thought yourself to be. Because in the end, what is heaven other than the fact that you're no longer walking this earth as you imagine yourself to be? Something else is living your life for you. That's what you're after. Next paragraph, please. The very attempt to convince, coerce, or use social, economic, religious, or political force to make others see where they are blind is how the blind try in vain to convince themselves that they alone are able to see what is true and good and necessary for all. Are you never not trying to coerce, convince, or otherwise get people to see your point of view as at least close to more right than the one they have? It's true, isn't it? In the end, every human being is a kind of control freak. It's just that some are more active than others and some are passive. But it's the same mind punishing what it thinks is a mind other than itself, and no mind that this mind wants to punish is other than the mind doing the punishing. It's all the same level of consciousness without anybody knowing it. Don't you see what is true and good for the good of all, don't you? And isn't it interesting that everything that I resent and have hatred for in this world is because I see the good and they don't? How insane is that? But we don't see it as insane, do we? Because I am, say the word out loud, identified. I think that's what we're going to talk about on Sunday. Not sure yet, but could be. Next paragraph. And inherent in all such grand visions, how many of you have grand visions of a time to come where people won't bother you anymore? Where you won't bother yourself anymore. And inherent in all such grand visions of a better world to come, that is, for those willing to see it, there dwells an unseen dark conclusion. Anyone who cannot see the utopia they're being told is dawning right before their eyes must be re-educated. Now, don't think I'm asking you to see globally and I'm asking you to see individually. Are you not always trying to re-educate the people around you? I want to re-educate the waiter. I exert myself. Control, control, control. Because if I can't get everybody to see the world I see it as I see it, then I'm at enmity with everyone and everything that I meet. So my only path is to somehow or other produce, whether it's by hook or crook, by finance, authority, social prominence, the way I dress, the car I drive, it doesn't matter, whatever. I have to get you to see me how I want to be seen, because who I think I am depends upon your confirmation. Withdraw your confirmation and we are in conflict, you and I. That's personality. Still on the question number 1. Next paragraph. Last paragraph this is. Now, if you doubt the truth of the comments that I've just covered with you, just quietly challenge the assertions of those who believe they know what's best for you or the rest of the world accordingly. Then stand back and give silent thanks for finally being able to see what lurks beneath. Do you know why you won't say to other people what you want to say to them? And I'm not talking, this is not licensed to be cruel. Do you know why you can't say no to people? Because you know what lurks beneath is coming up. And when it comes up in them, it's coming up in you, sweet Christ. It is coming up in you, and you can't do anything about what comes up in you once it's come up in them. And then you blame what lurks in the dark in them for what has come up in you, you who would have nothing like that in yourself if that person didn't say and do what they just did, so that the very thing that lurks beneath, that is suddenly revealed by some circumstance, finds conveniently a way to frame what has appeared from underneath, from the darkness of this consciousness, so that I can see it's not really I who is like this, it is you who are like that, and that's why we are at odds. Until you see the way I see, we are at odds with each other. That's the special writing. So back to Kevin. Read the first question again, if you will. And we're just going to reframe it ever so briefly and then move on to the second part.
In my studies over the years, I keep learning about the ego. What is it? Why is it there? Why do we have it?
Okay, that's good enough.
Okay.
So something that I think isn't really me shows up all the time saying it is me. And then because I don't want it to be me, I have to figure out how to prove it's not me and get you to see it wasn't me, but you who made me what I am. Isn't that the story? So here we're bringing you in now. It's a little bit like a deep dive. We will not get through this stuff, but we're going to do the best we can. We'll come back anytime. So are you ready? Now, please, wide awake. I know this is tough stuff. I try deliberately to have some levity, a cheerful smile from time to time. Because I know where this falls. I don't come to bring peace. I come with a sword, said Christ. To separate. Separate what? What lurks beneath and my identification with it. So, now it's your turn for a few minutes, and I guess we can get up on the board. I don't know if we can. It's a little bit of a, no, too much to ask. Too much to ask. We're still working our way through this stuff. We're a young group of students, technologically speaking. What lurks beneath in you? What have you seen come up that you would give your eye teeth not to have seen, let alone to have become identified with, but that clearly when it did, and this is the point, in a heartbeat, now listen, something comes up in me and it is met with a summary resistance to its appearance. It isn't like, oh God, look at, I didn't know that was lurking down there. The summary resistance is part of the structure of personality so that it can frame what has come up inside of itself and find someone else to blame for what is a part of itself that it doesn't know is a part of itself. Do you see it? So what lurks beneath? Anybody? John in the back.
Something that is so infallible it might as well be God Almighty.
Okay, it was a long sentence. He said, something that believes it is so infallible that it must be God Almighty. In other words, what comes up in me is instantaneous righteousness. That's lurking down there. I don't think it's down there. Do you get suddenly righteous when anybody challenges you? Isn't defensiveness a form of righteousness? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Haven't you been startled? See, I try to make this encouraging. I really do. I'm charged with that responsibility to make palatable and promising the very thing that no human being wants anything to do with. How astonishing that in a heartbeat I can become filled with rage, ready to squash anything and anyone that has produced inside of me this violent reaction. Because you see, this violent reaction can't be just coming up from inside of me. It has to be some creature that's appeared that came into the room with you when you did what I didn't want you to do. That's where this creature came from. It's not my creature. Creature features. What lurks beneath in you? Anybody? Chris?
A whining crybaby.
A whining crybaby, she said. How many of you? But see, here's the problem, and she even spoke about it before class. She got up and said, I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, and I couldn't go back to sleep because there was a 3-year-old crying in the bed next to me, and I don't have a 3-year-old. It was whining and crying, whatever it was whining, my body, my money, my blisses, my blasses, all that, and it was crying. One day you will know that it's not you. You think it's you. And that's why you pay attention to it. Because you believe somehow or other it's so familiar to me. And maybe I'm not whining and crying about the same things I was 10 years ago, but I have new things to whine and cry about, don't I? And what are the new things that I'm whining and crying about, if not what my personality, who I think I am and was in that moment, coming up with a new way to frame whatever I was whining and crying about before. So now I don't whine and cry about those things. I changed. Did I change? Or is what lurks beneath still there and still being actualized in a moment where I don't know it's been done, and instantaneously what? Identification with what has come up from the dark. What else? Anybody? Ellen.
There's something that loves to torture me.
Something comes up out of this dark. I'm sitting there having my chocolate souffle. I was just hallucinating for a moment. Having my chocolate souffle, and the next thing I know, I'm tormented. I spent 2 hours making it. Now something's saying, you pig, you shouldn't be eating this. Yes or no? Fill in the blanks accordingly. Are you not tormented on the spot, given whatever the particular situation may be? Heidi. Out from me will come the wish to punish someone. And I don't mean just punish them with my eyes. I mean, I wish they knew the pain they gave me. How Christian is that? I wish they knew what they made me feel. They were laughing at me. I was humiliated. Why are they like that? I want them to see what they are. And when you want people to see what they are, guess who's blind to what you are and what came up out of the darkness in you? See it? Anybody else? Namita.
Blame others or the situation for my pain.
Up comes, we were just along the same lines. I am instantaneously sure that you are to blame for whatever this bitterness, this pain may be. Who else? Barbara.
The nature that can never lose face.
I don't know that I walk around like that. I don't know that. Do you know that? Do you think to yourself like, look at my face? Nice, isn't it? Meaning, look at me. If you could see me from the inside, you'd throw palm leaves down where I walk. Let me change that for you now. If you could see what lurks inside of someone who is identified with their face, their body, their possessions, their health, if you could see what anybody who was identified with anything was filled with, then you would understand that what lurks beneath is that anger and that resentment that comes up anytime anyone even remotely suggests that I am not the way I imagine myself to be. Is it not like that? One more and then we'll go on. Roger. Resentment comes up. And you know, it's almost a misnomer to say it comes up, because that would seem like it wasn't connected to the condition. The resentment is actually part of the condition, and the condition inseparable from the consciousness in which it's revealed. Eric, last one.
Inability to consider others.
This is a big one. And it's a little slightly off, but what he's saying is, I'm beginning to see, to reframe it, my first impulse is selfishness. That's my first impulse. What I want, how I want it, when I want it, as I want it. That's my first impulse with everyone and everything. And the only reason it doesn't seem like that's the truth is because I want something from those that I don't want to appear selfish in. So I'm going to give, in quotes, all that I can give them. Why? So I can get everything back that supports the image I have of myself as being someone who considers others. So we're getting a picture. We don't have time to go into it. Like I said, I'm running out of time. But can you see, yes or no, that most everything everybody said that lurks beneath, it lurks beneath us, doesn't it? Who can tell me why? It's because it belongs to one level of being. Let's read the second question. I hope to get through this at least.
I would like to understand and learn more about chief feature. What role does it play in our life? How do we see what our chief feature is?
Now, I'm not going to ask you what you think that question is. And for those who have no idea, the words chief feature belongs to a work before this work that is intimately connected with a line of teachings beginning with thousands of years ago prior to Jesus Christ, all of which are connected with a single theme that runs through all Gnostic, all ancient teachings. And what runs as a common thread through all true ancient teachings is that you and I are here not to serve ourselves, but to discover a relationship with something that is by its nature celestial and divine, so that in our relationship to the divine through the wish and necessity of serving it that way, we can begin to see, and how else would we see what Eric asked? How would I ever know and one day you won't say this the way I'm saying it, I am the most selfish human being that ever walked the planet. I wonder, have you ever had any inclination of that? But see, the problem is there's judgment in that, isn't there? So judgment is part of the framework of personality, isn't it? Because when I judge myself, it must prove that I'm other than what I've judged. So I'm the worst person, the most selfish person that ever lived, probably the most angry, judgmental, ambitious, what else can I be that's terrible? I'm all of those things. They lurk in me. Aren't I the worst human being? And you're bragging. So to understand this idea of chief feature, it's referring to something that is a gradual formulation within and a part of the personality. So that when all is said and done, this chief feature, this main formulation of conditions and the consciousness that is acted on them produces, without anyone knowing it, we come into this life as babes. In one respect, other than what may have, they call it skarma. In one respect, nothing is already fully formulated in a newborn. But you can see, if you've ever had children or been around them, a lot of them come in with a whole lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense for a child 3, 4, 5 years old. I remember Chris told me that one of her daughters, when she was like a kid, said, I'm going to poison him. He was talking about, wasn't that something? I'm going to yeah, like I did in another lifetime. I poisoned that other person. This will work here. It's a great solution to the pain I have around this person. Where does that come from? It's carried over. And that tendency belongs to a certain disharmony in the human's essence, in the chief qualities and characteristics that you and I bring into this world with us, most of which are connected to this idea of a nefesh, most of which are connected to a certain level of soul that all creatures have. It's just there. Now, please, if you can put this together in your mind. So here I am, and something lurks beneath. And what is this thing that lurks beneath? And then we can start to say, well, it's something that was formed over time. I didn't give form. I would have never acceded to letting something like that kind of selfishness be formed in me, that kind of aggressiveness, that kind of freaky control nature. I'd never let this guilt, would you let those things grow in you? Would you? No. But there they are. So now, try to understand that chief feature is kind of like the Pharaoh of personality. Do you not have a Pharaoh that lives inside of you and says, go make bricks? Don't you? In the land of Egypt, all of this was old language for a dark nature in a dark consciousness that doesn't understand it. So this Pharaoh, it tells me who I am. It frames everything that happens to me. And it does so in a very specific way. Because I don't want to get into the actual specifics of this idea of chief feature. One day, you won't have to know those words. One day you will see, because it is given to you through your willingness to observe the whole of this structure and everything that lurks beneath. Here's another thing before I move on to, see, you're afraid of Pharaoh. You live in mortal fear of the part of you that comes up and says, no! That comes up and suddenly it's so angry and full of worry and doubt, that's so negative because someone else did. Why else would I let what any other human being is experiencing become the source of my experience, unless there was some kind of compatico, something connected to it that I couldn't see, an energetic movement between the world and its pattern and the Pharaoh that's responsible for its creation, for this unconscious nature. But it has a specific nature to it. That's why it's called the chief feature. It is the part of you that is a formulation over time of something that, because of tendency, because of what I came into this world with. Some of us come into this world with a little more type A. A little more energy, a little more interest, a little more ambition, a little more poet, a little more artist. Each of us comes in with a certain set of tendencies. The life that we're given is designed, though you may not know it yet, to bring about a relationship between all of these parts, so that you can begin to understand that they are all related, as are you related to every human being and all of their parts, because their parts aren't different than your parts. They're just balanced differently and set themselves at the front of the stage differently, but all of us have all of those parts. So that this chief feature, for instance, speaking about myself, I grew up, and for whatever reason, my mother thought I was the next coming. She just loved me. God bless my mother. And I was this and I was that. And when friends would come over, she'd go, look at how handsome he is. Now, she thought she was flattering. She just loved the feeling of herself. She loved me. I have no question about it. But no, isn't he adorable? Then somebody grabs your cheek and you go, Jesus Christ, leave me alone. But you become accustomed to living with confirmation. It becomes part of your personality, the hunger for it. And as the hunger for confirmation, by the way, just as some of us have the opposite of that, and we begin to hunger for not confirmation, but something to justify the conflict we feel with people that we think challenge the image we have of ourselves, that we blame for our pain. All of this are aspects of chief feature. And they are all kind of structured over time through a process of what? Do you remember when you were small? I love chocolate. Now, I think chocolate is the food of the gods personally, but you growing up and your mother feeds you. Shut him up. Stop the crying. Give the child some pleasure. Say something that makes you feel better and tries to make the child feel better. You can see this, can't you? So what happens to that child? The child begins to equate the pleasure of the power, the food, the substance with what? With comfort. So that gradually a person becomes someone who has to have that all the time. Some kind of pleasure, something to assuage some kind of sense of being incomplete or not worthy. And so their chief feature becomes something that it's like a hub of a wheel. And everything, all the various features and characteristics rotates around it, which is why it doesn't matter how you change what those experiences are. The hub remains in place and continues to draw to itself what it must have in order to support what personality has established in it for pleasure or protection, for the pursuit of something or a way to escape something. In some respects, the poison of knowledge of old teachings, the poison of them, even though they are invaluable in some respect, the poison of them is that you start to want to understand what you think that means. So that you look at life and what you want from it through the very personality that has been conditioned completely, and then seek something to console itself in the knowledge of itself. That's what it does, and it never stops that because nothing can satisfy it. This nature, this unconscious nature, is mammon. The Pharaoh was insatiable. And when he couldn't get the Jews, he couldn't get the Israelis, or any dictator can't get what he wants from his people, he will exact more pain and punishment on them, just as we exact more pain and punishment on ourselves when we don't live up to what we believe we're meant to live up to. And we do it to everyone else as well, do we not? And I'll finish the talk where I started it. God willing, the day comes, and it comes sooner than later, and it comes in greater depth and breadth than I will be able to describe, where you see that everything that you think you know belongs to a knower inside of you called your personality, and the chief feature around which all of these things circulate, as if somehow or other you're a living creature. You are alive as a human being, but spiritually you are not alive. Spiritually you live the life that personality frames for you, and that promises you freedom if you can just reframe it again and again and again. And one day you will recognize, you know what, God help me, I'm not going to reframe this moment. I'm not. I'm not going to try to understand it with who I am, with what I've done, where I've been. I'm not going to bring anything from my past to bear on what has been produced inside of me. And when you do that, and as you do that, you will begin to discover, which is actually the next question in the thing, but I'll have to do it later.
Do you want me to bring it up?
Well, read the question from Carl, and then I'll take John's question next time, okay? That's number 4. Because it does connect to this, and then we'll have worked through at least 3 of the comments for tonight.
We could continue on after the
Well,
talk.
People are getting...
Talk.
Amita says, it's okay, go on.
All right, let's throw this question from Carl in. He says, hopefully Guy could expand a bit on this, the topic on impartial self-observation. It was impartial self-observation. Self-observation leads to self-awakening, which then leads to self-liberty. I just wanted more insight on how to not identify and keep my eye out of whatever I see in my work of self-observing.
So what is Carl asking? Please, anybody? Did you hear the question, or were you? See, I think you're too tired at this point. John.
How do I not identify?
Basically, what does it mean to not identify? Because something in me tells me that would be observing myself, and that seems to be the path to liberation according to what I've read. Something like that. Anybody want to take another shot at that, what he asked? Self-observation leads to self-awakening, which leads to self-liberty. I just want more insight on how to not identify and keep my eye out of whatever I see in the work of my self-observation. First, I answered this question. I said, what happens if I understand the futility of allowing my reaction and their associated conditioned thoughts to frame the moment that I just found myself feeling a captive of? What happens? I'll tell you what happens is you become the observer of a part of you that is terrified not to frame it and to know what happened so that it can protect itself the next time from that circumstance. So that self-observation has nothing whatsoever to do with me trying to be the observer of something. It has everything to do, on the other hand, with me being watchful at all times, because I understand that at the drop of a hat, something's coming up from beneath, and when it comes up from what's beneath, it's going to draw me down into it. It's going to draw my eye into it. And I'm starting to see that whatever the I is, whatever part of myself that's dragged down into that painful reaction is connected to that reaction. So how can any I that appears in that moment save me from what it is a part of and is interested in its continuity? Because that's what chief feature, that's what false personality, that's all it wants. It just wants the continuity of itself at the cost of your spiritual rebirth. It wants to live. And it feeds on resistance to anything that challenges what it's conditioned by. That's what it feeds on. And then it feeds on the opposite of that, which are the promises it gives itself to escape the pain that it actually created by being identified with what was challenged. Can you see this with me? Yeah. So self-observation, Carl, begins with not trying to not identify, but being present to how painful it is to be identified with anything talking to you about what's tormenting you in that moment. That's all for now.
Okay.
Yeah, take a break. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
All right, welcome back to class. Just do a quick audio check. Sound good out there? Yeah, okay, great. Welcome back to part 2 of class. Now is a time when those of you in the room can come up and speak up here at the mic if you wish. If you're online, you can send a comment or question to me in the chat area or the question area, and I will be your proxy. I'll come up and read it to Guy. Before we get started, I just want to say a quick reminder of Deep Dive Wednesdays. Continue to send in your questions. We are keeping them all on a list, and we will get through them. So if you have something that you want to know more about, just send in your question to guyfinley.org/contact. Also, I just wanted to remind you about this special promo we have going on right now. If you support the foundation with a donation of $10 or more, we are going to send you this awesome album, Secrets of Spiritual Success. It's a CD album. It's from a previous Talks in the Pines workshop. It has 8 hours of material, just a fabulous album. And the promotion is just going on for the next couple of days, the rest of this week. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can go to guyfinley.org/special and make your $10 donation there, and we'll send this to you. And it also includes the MP3 version of this album, so you get access to the downloadables right away. All right, let me just do a quick check here. I have a couple of questions that came in via GoToWebinar, but I also want to see if anyone has their hands raised. If you're online and GoToWebinar and you want to speak to Guy, remember you can raise your hand, just click or tap the hand icon, and that lets me know that you want to talk to him. And I don't see any at the moment, so I think we'll get started with one of the questions that came in. All right, this was a question, Guy. Oh, I need to send this to you, don't I? Hang on one second.
If it's short, you can read it. Maybe I'll get it.
I think I better text it to you.
Okay.
This is from Annette. Okay, so Annette says, Guy, whenever I talk to one person a few times a year, they seem to repeat the same story about certain people. I finally responded by saying, I have no idea. I do not live with them. I often feel disappointed and empty after the talk, like going on a hamster wheel. Then I comment on how one person is always so angry and opinionated, so I do not talk to them as much. Too much energy and focus on others whenever we chat.
Annette, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, hi Annette. So, can anybody see the contradiction in her question? A number of students are nodding they can. So I often feel disappointed and empty after I speak to certain people like a hamster on a wheel. And then I comment on how one person is always so angry and opinionated. Do I have to know why something burns me? Or is that it burns me enough? You have to ask this question yourself. I'm just posing it to you. Do I have to know why I'm so afraid? Or is it enough to see this fear? Because if I see the anger, if I see the fear without the framework, then I'm seeing it free of my past. I'm seeing it free of all the particular conditions that create that kind of response, that pain that comes up that is part of this personality. Personality was formed in part as a way to protect itself from pain. Here's this child, innocent. The mother has an anger attack, shakes the child. Child sees something that no child should see. What does a child do with that kind of energy that comes into the innocence of its essence? What does a child do? It has to figure out a story. It has to know why it's experiencing this pain, because it can't deal with the pain. It has no reference to it, no body of experience by which to understand it. So it instantaneously begins to paint a picture. And where does it get the paints and the brush and the canvas by which to paint this canvas, to frame it? Where does it get it from? From the very level of consciousness that produced it. From the content of what other past experience has produced, not just the reaction, because that's where all reactions come from. Reactions are born of resistance. Resistance is reaction. Not resistance gives rise to reaction. Resistance is reaction. Our relationship with this resistance reaction is always the same, which is something tries to paint a frame around it so I know what to do with the pain in that resistance. What if I didn't have something with which to frame that pain? Then I would begin to see with new eyes the very source of it. I'd understand the condition without needing to understand what produced it, because I'd be privileged to being a participant in that relationship. See it for myself. That's how the mind one day grows quiet. It grows quiet because it just can't talk to itself anymore, because it sees all it's ever done is talk nonsense. It's all it's ever done. If you're talking to yourself, you're listening to nonsense. It's that simple. But we don't see it like that. I rely on talking to myself. Don't you? Who can I turn to when nobody loves me? I gotta talk. Gotta talk. What do you talk? What do you say? I gotta talk. I'm going in and out of Broadway shows. Why? I can't bear being alone. Being all one. I can't bear it. Who can't bear being alone? This is what you will begin to see, and not just see what can't bear this aloneness, but you'll begin to see how that nature fabricated an entire world. Everything that I explain to myself about myself and what I'm going through is part of an immense system of thought and belief produced by a personality in order to ensure that it can perceive through life and pursue what it wants and be protected from what it doesn't. And I take that as my life. One day you will see that's not life. And then you'll begin the entrance into a crucible that is the true crucifixion, which is what happens when I can no longer talk to myself, justify myself, explain myself, or, God help me, want others to see that what I think is true. I think that's all. Any other? Okay.
Oopsies. Here's a question that came in from Juan.
Okay, you know what I didn't do, Annette? I don't want to just explain that. At least I want to give you something to work with. Because how many of you talk to people that are opinionated and angry? Can you escape? First of all, what do they call it? It's not a conundrum. What do they call it? Opinionated is angry. There's really one word. It's not like they're opinionated and angry. Opinion is the source of anger, isn't it? Now, why would opinion? I can have an opinion. You've got to have opinions. But when my sense of self is pinned on my opinion, and then you challenge my opinion, then suddenly it's like pin the tail on the donkey, because I want to have someone to blame for the pain of my own opinions that can't be challenged. So what if I actually start to understand, you know what? I'm never going to be free of opinionated, angry people. Until what? Until I stop resisting opinionated, angry people. You want to know how you'll be free of yourself one day? You'll stop resisting the pain of insisting that your opinion in view of things is correct, and anyone that doesn't makes you a victim. Anger disappears in direct proportion to the disappearance of your resistance. That's how anger disappears. When you see that your resistance to the condition is a structure of a self that requires everything stays in place. And then it just all, and it is. Mr. Howard used to call it the collapse of the haunted house. There actually is a collapse of a haunted house, a real collapse. Shocks intimate the possibility of it. But when there have been enough shocks collected in the interest of discovery and the willingness on your part to see and ask without thought, obviously all of this is coming up from beneath, isn't it? I wonder what lurks beneath. Then when something comes up from beneath, you won't go, ah, and pull the covers over your head. You'll be standing there, Carl, as the witness. It was Carl, wasn't it? No. Juan. No, I'm not. I'm back to another.
It was Carl's self-observation.
It was Carl, yeah, about self-observation. Then you'll understand what self-observation is. Self-observation is not how you get rid of what you see. It's how you begin to understand that you are what you see. And in that, there's freedom.
Okay. You want the question from Juan?
Yes, please.
Question from Juan. Hello, Guy, and thank you very much. Is it valid to say that the unconscious nature creates a replica of reality overlapping over actual reality, where the divine acts on me? Do you want me to read that again?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's a toughie. Is it valid to say that the unconscious nature creates a replica of reality overlapping actual reality where the divine acts on me?
Who's that, Juan, you said?
That's one. Sorry, yes, that's one.
I can't discourage the intellectual probing of pain. It'd be a mistake. But when you have probed and probed and probed and discover that your probing doesn't produce anything other than another idea that you have to probe, then you'll begin, instead of wanting to probe these things, you'll want to participate in them so you see them without the prober, the one probing. So, to be super clear, Juan, you say, is it valid to say the unconscious nature creates a replica of reality? No, it's more accurate to say, Carl, that this unconscious nature itself is a replica of reality. And it can only create itself. That's what life made in its own image is. That's why it said in the Old Testament, have no graven images. Because the image is always connected with the past, with knowledge. And that's what this self does all the time, is it simply calls up all of the old images, all the things that it knows, and then it reconfigures them in order to find a way to get past what it says is life challenging it the way it's challenging it. I don't know the fact or the not fact of the fallen angel and all that business, all these stories that represent points in the evolution and devolution. They happen at the same time in the evolution and the devolution of this consciousness. But I can say with some semblance of validity that there is something in us that absolutely, unequivocally wants nothing before it. Nothing before it. And Christians, Muslims, Jews, so-called religious people, they say, no, it's true, I love Christ, I love Buddha, I love blah, blah, blah. You don't know what love is. You can't know what love is as long as you have something before the moment of your awareness of what you are. The awareness of what you are is what love is and where it lives. And it doesn't judge. And it doesn't have to probe. But again, I don't want to deny that part. For decades, I did nothing but write questions to myself. Wanting to sort through a pain. I'd have all this pain. And I would know that what pain was telling me was true, wasn't, because it always had one thing, fight or flight. That's what pain has. It's a binary, consistent response. Fight or flight, that's it. And by the grace of God, I was at least somehow developed enough to know that a binary action that doesn't exist without the thing it's reacting to, so that fight doesn't exist without flight, flight without fight, that there can't be any possible reconciliation in listening to that nature. There's not there. So I would ask myself questions that would lead me bit by bit to some new insight into that nature that lurks beneath. And then with that new insight, I would use that as a basis for understanding a new relationship. And that new relationship, I'm glad I got to this because I didn't have a chance to put it in. Whereas the old relationship, where chief feature, whatever this person, where chief feature, it's that which everything revolves around. You see, it can't just go away. It has to be replaced by a new center, a new hub. A new relationship, not the relationship between personality and condition, but a relationship between revelation and the part of us that's producing that condition, so that the entirety of my life is no longer looking at life through the eyes of something that are going to frame it. Instead, it's looking at something that wants to see the nature of the frame and what's doing that painting. Then that one nature is replaced by another. The first becomes last. One sells all those beautiful, lose your life to gain it. All of those things begin to take on real meaning, because now you've entered into a life where all of that's taking place because of your wish and willingness to go through what you must for that to happen. Anything else, Kate, or we'll say? One more question. Come on, Namita. After the question, you can send us on our happy.
This is a question from Laura. I just sent it to you.
Yeah.
This goes great with what you were just talking about. In fact, I think it answers her question.
It does indeed.
I feel like my entire being is nothing but resistance. How do I begin to stop resisting life? And you just talked about asking the
I did,
question.
but I'll cover it briefly. So her question is, I feel like my entire life is nothing but resistance. How do I begin to stop resisting life? What is she asking? What is she asking? I'm filled with pain, and I'm beginning to realize that this pain is because I'm an endless resisting thing. Now, I don't always resist, because sometimes I want things and I'm not resisting what I want. I love being with you. I don't resist being with you until you're not who I wanted to be with. Happens every day, doesn't it? I love golf. Until I decide I'm going to take my life because I can't stand the way I play. Now, how is that even possible? You see, to this mind, it makes perfect sense, because all there is full-blown identification with something it sees as a problem, whose answer is never play again. Yeah, no, that's the answer. Or get in there and fight, and somehow make what you have never made happen, and then you get it to happen once, and you think you're reborn, and then suddenly you're back in the tomb again. Am I describing this pretty good? John? Yeah. This is an accurate description in the game of life. Until one day, you see what an absolute fool's errand it is to resist any revelation at all. I resist what doesn't appeal to me. I resist what doesn't prove me as I imagine myself. I resist anything that challenges the powers I think I have. I resist anyone who doesn't see me in the light I want to be seen in. And my whole life is spent, as she described, where my identity is an endless derivative of a moment of resistance that belongs to chief feature and its surrounding elements. And then one day, and this is where you have to get to, I intend to cover this in depth during the talks in Pines. When at last does this pain go away? When at last does this pain go away? And here's the answer, but you have to spend your life finding it to know it's true. The pain goes away when I no longer have anything to resist. That's when the pain goes away. And you're created for that relationship so that you assist the moment of those revelations instead of try to push them away. Come on, Namita. Everybody say hello to Namita.
Hello, everybody. So every time I walk, come here for to comment or ask questions, Guy has always introduced me as a victim, and now I see why, because I think victimhood or being a victim is my chief feature. And I hate to confess this in front of everybody, and especially my husband here today.
He won't use it against you, will he?
I think he will.
He says, my lips are sealed, you'll never hear from me. Why are you always complaining like you're the victim?
So yeah, I see this as you were talking. My whole life kind of was unfolding in front of me. I have always felt like a victim, even since I was a child. Like in school, I used to see all of the violence, or just injustice in the world, and I used to just subconsciously become a victim of it. And until I actually started these talks, or my spiritual journey started, that I started seeing. I think I'm still seeing the whole picture, but I do see how I play that role.
How Namita gravitates instantly into that role of wondering why things are happening to her the way they are. And just to be clear, so you know, it's encouraging that you see this, because you will at least no longer so quickly answer your own question. Now you'll begin to want to see the nature asking that question. It isn't chief feature. Don't think you don't know that. You will not know that until something very unique happens as a result of the observation of Namita that allows her enough freedom to let this revelation come without any judgment to it at all. Just boom, like Paul on the road to Damascus. And you will for a moment feel as he did, blind. You'll be blinded by the light, but it is a light that loves you, not a light that condemns you for what you're being given to see.
Yeah, I also noticed that this is my default state, though.
Yeah.
Like when I lose my attention or my awareness, I just go into this default state. And the minute
Is Namita the only person that has this default state? Oh, geez, you're not special at all.
That's okay. So every time I get my awareness back or I see it, it just goes away, but then I'm back into my default state. So,
right. So it doesn't really go away. It's just that your attention is momentarily placed on another kind of relationship. But the fact that you're drawn back into that default state that we'll call Namita means that I haven't seen Namita well enough yet. Because if I had seen her, I wouldn't take my eye off of her, would I? There you go.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. you.